So this evening we will chant from chapter 8, verse 18 through 28. प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् अव्यक्ताद्व्यक्तयः सर्वाः प्रभवन्त्यः रागमे रात्र्यागमे प्रलीयन्ते तत्रैवाव्यक्तसंज्ञके भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यः रागमे परस्तस्मात्तु भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिम् यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम पुरुषः स परः पार्थ भक्त्या लभ्यस्त्वनन्यया यस्यान्तस्थानि भूतानि येन सर्वमिदं ततम् यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयाता यान्ति तं कालं वक्ष्यामि भरतर्षभ अग्निर्ज्योतिरः शुक्लः षण्मासा उत्तरायणम् तत्र प्रयाता गच्छन्ति ब्रह्मविदो जनाः धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्ण षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर्योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते शुक्लकृष्णे गतिः येते जगतः शाश्वते मते एकया यात्यनावृत्तिम् अन्यया वर्तते पुनः नैते श्रुति पार्थ जानन् योगी मुह्यति कश्चन तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु योगयुक्तो भवार्जुन Vedeshu yajñeshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam atyeti tat sarvamidam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadhyam. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Akshara Brahma Yogo Namastamodhyayaha. So tonight we're on chapter 8. 3 weeks ago, I gave a class on several of the verses coming up to verse 22 in chapter 8, and then we found out that it didn't record. There was a problem with the recording. So then the next week, 2 weeks ago, I gave the same class again, so that there would be a complete record of all of the shlokas in the Gita. And then at the end of that class also it didn't record. And then last week I was in North Dakota. So this week I'm not going to give the same class over a third time, but I do plan to do it separately, just so that there's a record, because there are a lot of people who see this on YouTube. So few who watch it live streaming, in real time of giving it, but many more who watch it, people in India, people in other parts of the world, and people in different parts of the US who watch it. And so we need to have a full record of the full class. So I will give the part that was not recorded a third time, but that I'll do at a separate time, just arrange for somebody to record while I give a class to the camera. So tonight we will go forward. And so we'll start in chapter 8 with verse 23, but let me go over verse 22 to give a little background. In what we had done in the previous class that was not recorded, we talked about the nature of time, the nature, well, not the philosophical nature of time, but the expanse of time in the Hindu conception, how vast the conception of time was, which was quite different from the Western conception of time until the modern scientific period. And the recent scientific period. It was only in the 18th, and only in the 19th century that our sense of time began to expand very widely in the West through discoveries of modern science. But in India, in Hinduism, and in Hinduism's child, Buddhism, the conception of time was extraordinarily vast. And so we dealt with that, among other things, in the last class. And but all of this was in the context of the Parama Purusha, the Supreme Person. As I've said in other classes since we started chapter 7, the chapter 7 through 12 deal largely with the nature of God. The first 6 chapters are concerned with the self. Who am I? And teaching Arjuna to stand on the glory of the self, to stand on the nature of the self. And then 7 through 12 deal largely with the nature of God, of Ishvara Parama Purusha, the Supreme Person. And so this chapter also does that. The name of the chapter is Akshara Yoga Nama Ashtamodhyayaha. The 8th chapter named the yoga of the unchangeable person, the Akshara Purusha, the Supreme Person who is unmoving, unchanging, undiminishing. And so in verse 22, let's see, let me just look back. Yes, he had been talking about because he was Sri Krishna was talking about the nature of time and the expansive nature of time. He had been talking about Brahma, the creator. Chaturmukhi Brahma, that is four-headed Brahma, that is the minor deity, who is the direct creator. In Hinduism, as I've said before, Ishvara, God, is everything. Everything is God. Everything comes out of God. But the actual act of creating this universe that we touch, smell, taste, see, and hear, that is done by a minor deity, Brahma, who is the cosmic mind. And Brahma himself comes out of Ishvara. So again, everything is dependent on God. But the act of creating the universe is seen as a secondary act. And so talking about the vast nature of time and the nature of Brahma's time, the creator's time, where he, the length of his life and the length of a day of Brahma is the length of time that it is, etc. It staggers the mind, the conception of time of the ancients. And so then he says in the 20th, 21st verses, he talks about Brahma being known as the avyakta, the unmanifest. This universe is manifest, and Brahma, the cosmic mind, is the unmanifest. It's out of Brahma that this universe comes. But then Sri Krishna says in the 20th verse that separate from that avyakta, from that unmanifest Brahma, is the real unmanifest, which is the divine being. That Brahma is unmanifest unmanifest reality as far as this universe goes. It resolves back into the mind of Brahma. And Brahma, when he goes to sleep, the whole universe dissolves into pralaya, it's resolved back into a seed state. And then when Brahma wakes up again, the universe comes into being. And of course, the sleep of Brahma is meditation. But he says that more subtle than that, and further unmanifest than Brahma, is Ishvara, the supreme person. Because compared to Ishvara, even Brahma is manifest, is vyakta, not avyakta. So this universe, or Brahma compared to this universe, is avyakta. But compared to Brahma, Ishvara is avyakta, is the unmanifest. And so then in verse 22, which we did, where we ended last time, he talks about that Purusha, Parama Purusha. It says, Purusha sapara partha bhaktya labhyastvananyaya yasyantasthani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. So, O Partha, O son of Pritha, O Partha, Sa Purusha Paraha, that supreme person, Bhaktya Labhyastvananyaya, is attained by Ananya Bhakti, single-minded devotion, where you're not, where the mind is single-mindedly devoted to God. He's attained, that supreme being, the Lord of the universe, more unmanifest than the cosmic mind, Brahma. That is attained by single-minded devotion. In the Abrahamic traditions, especially in Judaism and Christianity, I don't know that this idea is there. The idea is there, but I don't know how they express it in Islam. But in Judaism and Christianity, there's the idea said in the Old Testament that the Lord thy God is a jealous God. God is jealous. What that means is it's an unfortunate use of terms, because to think of God as jealous, so that's not much of a God who gets jealous. But the psychological idea behind it, the truth behind it, behind the unfortunate expression is that God is attained by ananya bhakti, by single-minded devotion. So if I'm devoted to all kinds of other things and have a little bit of time for God, then that's better than nothing, but we won't get very far. It's only when finally the mind, and that takes a lifetime or lifetimes of striving, there's a calculus in spiritual life where we're constantly approaching an infinite point. And so we start with a little bit of devotion and a little bit of interest in spiritual life. That's good, but it's not enough. It's good. So if you have that, good, very good, better than not having it. But don't stop with that, because that's not enough. So we take that and develop it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Finally, we come to a point where the mind and heart are given completely to God. And then, as Sri Ramakrishna says, then that's like the rosy dawn. You don't yet see the sun, and yet the sky is becoming a rosy color, and you know, the sun is rising. The sun is rising. Now there's no more doubt. If it's dark night out and you have no timepiece, and maybe you were sleeping when the sun set and you have no idea what time it is, you know the sun's going to rise sometime, but you have no idea. You might have 7 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours before sunrise, and you don't know how long it's going to be. But when you see the rosy dawn, you say, oh, it's imminent. Now it's here. Now it's here. Now there's no doubt. Sunrise is here. And so when one attains to ananya bhakti, single-minded devotion to God, then we know that the work is done. We haven't yet attained to God. Once we've got that ananya bhakti, that doesn't mean attainment, but it means attainment is coming. That it's just a question of a little time before attainment comes. So the work is to get that. Once we get that, the work is over. Then it's just waiting for God, for the sun to finish rising, because the sun is rising now. So that Supreme Person is attained by single-minded devotion. Yes, yantastani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. So what is the nature of that Supreme Person, that Supreme Being? Yes, yantastani bhutani, in whom all beings are established. All beings exist within Him. Yena sarvamidam tatam, but by whom all of this is pervaded. So that it's contradictory as far as our experience of things in this world, where there's mutual exclusion. If I put this here, it's not over there. If I put it over there, it's not here. If I put this here, you can't put anything else right in that same space unless I move it. Then you can put another piece there. So everything operates by mutual exclusion. But here, all beings are established in God. This whole universe is within God. And yet the whole of God is within every being. So the whole of God is within everyone, and the whole of everything is within God. So it's a logical contradiction, but it's an experiential and a real fact that those who have experienced that, they see the reality of that. You think of the beautiful vision which Vaikuntanath Sanyal had, or after Kalpataru Day, when Sri Ramakrishna blessed some of the present devotees with spiritual awakening. He didn't bless Vaikuntanath Sanyal, but he told him he would come later. So later he blessed Vaikuntanath. And Vaikuntanath said for several days, he saw Sri Ramakrishna's smiling face within everything. How does that work? We don't, one can only experience it. That you can't, you could do Photoshop and take Sri Ramakrishna's picture and put it within every chair, within every person, within the clock, within the picture, within the lamp. But no, it's not like that. It was not a Photoshopped experience. He saw without contradiction that Sri Ramakrishna's smiling face inside of everything. Wherever he looked, inside of everything was Sri Ramakrishna's smiling face. So that we can't, and there we're talking about the form of Sri Ramakrishna. It's at least a little easier to intellectually understand, if not to visualize, because we can't, but to intellectually understand the formless reality of the Supreme Person, being within everything. But to see Sri Ramakrishna's smiling face within everything he saw, there was Sri Ramakrishna's smiling face. That we can't conceive. Because the face itself is spatial, and the things he sees are spatial. And how could this be within every single thing he looked at? So that we can't imagine. So, O son of Pritha, that Supreme Person in whom are included all created things, and by whom all of this is pervaded, is reached through one-pointed devotion. So then we go on to 23. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha yay prayata yanditam kalam vakshyami bharatarshabha. So, O Bharatarshabha, O bull among the Bharata clan, Or it's usually translated, "O best of the Bharatas," but it means the bull of the Bharatas, and the bull means it indicates the best. So yatra kale, at which time, at what time, anavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti. At the time where the yogi departs this life and attains to non-return, and the path by which he attains to return to this life. Tam kalam vakshyami Bharatarshava. O Bharatarshava, I will tell you those times, or that time by which one attains to non-return to this world, and that time by which one attains to return to this world. Meaning, of course, that at what time, dying at what time, or in what state, actually. But here, as we'll see, he's speaking in figurative terms of time. At what time does one die and attain to return to this world? That is, you die, you go to another world for some time, and then you find yourself, after longer or shorter periods, reborn here in this world. Or at what time does one die and not attain to return? One goes to a sublime spiritual world, the Brahma Loka, and there one remains for a long time and doesn't return to this world. So he's going to explain those two paths, the path of non-return and the path of return. So verse 24 begins that. Agnir Jyotiraha Shukla Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. So here he says that Brahma Vido Janaha, those people who have known Brahman, attained Brahma Gachanti, attain to Brahman. That is, they follow the path, Tatra Prayata, they follow the path which is Uttarayanam, the northern path, so-called. All of this I'll explain as far as it can be explained nowadays. One goes by this path where after one dies, it says that one first goes to Agni. That is, one goes to flame or to fire. One goes to Agni. Then to Jyoti. Then from fire, one goes to light, which is more subtle, more refined than flame. And from flame, one goes to Ahar, that is to the day. And from day, one goes to Shukla, that is the Shukla Paksha, the bright fortnight of the moon. From the bright fortnight of the moon, one goes to Shanmasa Uttarayanam, the northern path of the sun. That is when the 6 months from December until June. That is from the winter solstice until the summer solstice. That is when the sun is on its upward path, the Uttarayanam. So again, one goes departing by that path of the gods of fire, light, daytime, bright fortnight, and the 6 months of the northern solstice. Persons who are knowers of Brahman attain to Brahman. So those who are knowers of Brahman go by this path to Brahman. So what does that mean? Well, as Swamiji said, nobody knows now. Nobody knows now. Swamiji said that he had thought a lot about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. Swamiji had thought a lot about it, and he didn't know what it meant, and nobody knows those people who claim to know what it means, unless they are very great souls who have had some extraordinary revelation, then they're just making it up. It was known at one time. So one thing I would say is some people take this as just an ancient superstition. And that's possible, yes, it's possible. But I don't take it that way, because there are many things that you find in the scriptures that were said which look in the light of modern knowledge to be pure superstition. But then with time, you begin to see that, no, there was deep experience behind it. They were talking about something real, but talking in terms that sound superstitious. For instance, and I've talked about this before, the 5 elements. Well, we know they're not 5 elements. Space, wind, fire, water, and earth. Oh, it's an old superstition. They're not 5 elements. There are 90-something natural elements in the periodic table of chemical elements, and there are over 100, including the man-made elements. And so throw it out. It's all ridiculous. It's all just ancient superstition. They didn't have modern science, so they just had superstition. No, it was based on deep experience. It was a different analysis of the world from the modern scientific one. They weren't concerned about finding the chemical components of this or this or this so that you could recombine things and make new things like this. No, they were concerned with the nature of experience itself. And so space, that refers to everything that we hear. There's the sense of hearing. They called that the element of space. And so akasha. So akasha, it's sometimes translated as ether. But ether nowadays, if you talk about ether, then people say, well, Einstein showed that there is no ether. Well, nowadays, actually, there are physicists right now who say that actually we should revive the idea of ether, that Einstein misunderstood ether. So maybe the ether will come back. But for the time being, now that ether is out, better to avoid the term ether and talk in terms of space, because akasha also means space. So the sense of hearing, or all that we hear, was said to be governed by akasha. The akasha, space, was just the term used for the principle of hearing. Wind. Wind was the principle used for the sense of touch. The sense of touch. And so all that we touch, that is called wind. And all that we see was called Agni, fire. So the principle of sight was called Agni. The principle of smell was called earth. The principle of taste was called water. And so the 5 senses, we don't know anything of the external world except through the 5 senses. If a person is blind, then usually their sense of hearing and sense of touch is highly heightened because they have to experience the world through those senses without the sense of sight. I've tried, since I was a kid, I've tried occasionally when going in an elevator or wherever there's Braille, to touch it with my eyes closed and see if I could tell what it was. I just feel something rough. But the fact that there's 1 dot and then 3 and then 2 under that I can't tell at all. But a person who's blind, because of the sense of touch is heightened without the eyes, they can easily tell that this is the pattern of dots. To me, it's just the same roughness, whatever you touch. If a person who is both deaf and blind, like Helen Keller, she couldn't see, she couldn't hear. So it was mainly through the sense of touch that she knew the world around her. Smell and taste, yes, but those are minor senses. Touch is touch, seeing, and hearing are the 3 dominant senses, and it's through those 3 that we have a sense of space around us. Through smell and taste, you don't have any sense of space. It's only through sight, hearing, and touch that you have that. And so we know the world through the 5 senses. We don't know anything about the world except through the 5 senses. Even modern scientific instrumentation, which is fabulous, which is amazing, the instrumentation that we have now to examine the world around us, it's all based on the 5 senses. All of it is just nothing but an extension of the 5 senses, an amplification of the 5 senses, because our senses are limited in what they can perceive. And so all scientific instrumentation is meant to amplify the power of the 5 senses. As we know, a dog can smell, I forget what it is, but it's something like 1 million times more sensitive, the dog's sense of smell, than our sense of smell. A huge amount more sensitive than our sense of smell. And so when we take our dog for a walk and the dog finds everything interesting, smelling everything, we think, why are they smelling all of this stuff, and why are they smelling where their dogs urinated and things like that? For them, that's not something that smells nasty. That's something that gives all kinds of information. They can tell all kinds of things by smelling a fire hydrant. And so for us, it's useless nastiness. What's the use of smelling all of these things? But for them, it's information. For them, it's not good or bad. It's tremendous information which is important in their life and important in their social life, in their survival life, and just in knowing what's going on around. We want to see and to hear everything. A dog sees and hears, but they're more interested in smelling everything. So even if they can see you, they want to come up to you and smell you. Because the sense of smell is very powerful for them. And so all of our scientific instrumentation is meant just to give us greater sensitivity of seeing and hearing, especially of touching, so that we can understand the world in more detail. So again, all of that is to say just that this idea of the 5 elements, it looks like a pure superstition. Get rid of it. What are all these old ancient superstitions? What do we need all of those for? But then you find, when you study it, you find, no, there was profound significance behind the division of the, they weren't interested in the chemicals that make things up. Not that that's not valuable, but that's not what they were. They were interested in inner experience, how it is that I experience the world. I experience it in these 5 ways. And these 5 elements are the essence of what I experience, the essence of sight, the essence of sound, the essence of touch, the essence of smell, the essence of taste. And so in a similar way, this idea of departing and going by these 2 different paths, having seen so many times in the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, the major scriptures, that there are things which look like old superstitions where the poor people didn't have the advantages of modern science, so they had stupid ideas. No, you find that so many of these ideas which look like superstitions, there was a great truth embedded in them. And so probably there was a great truth embedded in this also, that at the time when we die, we follow one of these 2 paths. And certainly it is symbolic, because when we die, we don't enter into a flame. Of course, yes, the body is cremated, but even then, they're not talking about what happens to the body. They're talking about consciousness, where the consciousness goes when leaving this body. It goes, and so the commentators had lost the meaning of this also. But one thing they say, and it may be true, I don't know myself, but it may be true, they say that the scriptures are talking about the presiding deity in this. It's the presiding deity of flame, it's the presiding deity of day, it's the presiding deity of the 6 months and so forth. That I don't know. But what matters to me is not my not knowing, but even Swami Vivekananda, with his deep understanding of the scriptures and of experience of things, he didn't know what these, and he said that I don't know what these things mean. But he didn't for that reason throw them out as ancient superstition, because his conviction also was that these things that are said in the scriptures, there was some experience behind it. The fact that we don't understand what that experience was doesn't mean that it's stupid old people who didn't know what they were talking about. No, there must have been some experience behind it. And actually, in this description of Sri Krishna, he is greatly contracting the steps that are mentioned in the Vedas. And as the commentators say, that was because the different steps can be collapsed. When you say one thing, it includes the other steps as well. And so the full length was, let's see, where is it? Okay. The departing soul going by the northern path, the Devayana, they reach the deity of flame. From flame, they reach day, Ahar. From day, they reach the bright fortnight, Shukla Paksha. From bright fortnight, the 6 months during which the sun moves northward. So all of those Sri Krishna has mentioned. But then, from those 6 months, you go to the year. And from the year, one goes to the sun. From the sun, one goes to moon. From the moon, one goes to lightning. There, a non-human person leads them to Brahma, the creator. This is the divine path, the Devayana. The divine path, going by all of these steps. So again, Sri Krishna just mentions several of them, but not all of them. Now, I said that Swami Vivekananda was interested in this, and he tried to understand the meaning of it. In fact, I think it was 1895. I believe it was 1895, he wrote a short letter to Nikola Tesla, whom he knew from the Parliament of Religions, and he met Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla took ideas from Swamiji, which he used and developed for the rest of his life. Nowadays, there's a lot of interest in Nikola Tesla. Again, in his time, he was undoubtedly one of the greatest scientific minds of the 19th and 20th century. As great as Einstein, but he doesn't get much credit because he died in penury, and his ideas were stolen by others, and other ideas of his died with him. In fact, it's interesting that when he died, it was either the FBI or the precursor to the FBI, I forget which it was, but a secret, National Secret Service, but I think it was the FBI. When he died, they broke into his apartment and took all of his papers, which have not been seen since. Because his research into energy and energy generation, he had said that electrical energy is everywhere. It's universal and it's everywhere. And all we have to do is to learn to tap it. And he claimed to have found the way to tap it so that everyone could have access to free electrical power. And then he also discovered the things that could be the basis for extremely powerful weapon systems. And so all of these things, the government was afraid of those getting into the wrong hands. And corporations were afraid of them getting into hands that would make more money than they were making and put them out of business. And so there was a lot of interest in keeping his ideas secret. In fact, some of you who, if any of you have studied Nikola Tesla, you know that there was a great battle between him and Thomas Edison. That Thomas Edison had developed DC electrical power generation, and it was Tesla who developed AC, alternating current, rather than direct current. And so Edison used all kinds of trickery to try to convince people that AC power was extremely dangerous, whereas actually the opposite was true. He even killed an elephant in a stunt to show that AC current was so deadly it could kill an elephant, to convince people to use his DC current. And of course, nowadays we all use AC current, except DC and batteries and cars and so forth. And so that corporate power tried in a number of ways, either to buy his patents, to squash his patents, and or to claim credit for his patents. And so anyway, all of that is to say, let me get back to the point that Nikola Tesla took ideas from Swamiji about prana and akasha. Prana being energy itself, and in whatever manifestation you have energy. That energy itself is prana, and akasha is the source of matter itself. And Swamiji had told Tesla that there must be some way of some equivalence between prana and akasha. There must be a meeting point between prana and akasha. And so Tesla told him, and this is in one of Swamiji's letters, told him that he thought he could prove mathematically the equivalence of matter and energy. And so Swamiji writes that a friend of mine, a great scientist, says that he thinks he can prove mathematically the equivalence of matter and energy. Tesla then gave that up. We don't hear more of it from Tesla. The next we hear of it, of course, is in Einstein's Special Theory of Relativity, published in 1906. And the E equals mc squared, the equation which Einstein is most famous for, that is only in a footnote in the theory of special relativity. Einstein didn't like it. He didn't feel comfortable with E equals mc squared. The thing that he is most famous for The equation he's most famous for was something he wasn't comfortable with. He didn't even want to put it in the paper on special relativity. But his wife, who was a cousin of Tesla, she told him, no, this is important. You must put that in. And so she put it in a footnote. She never got any credit for the work she did. She was as great a physicist as Einstein was. And they were collaborators on the development of the theory of relativity. But at that time, it was very much a man's world. And so the wife didn't get any credit. Einstein got all the credit for the paper. But it was because of her that E equals mc squared, the equation he's most famous for, was put into the special theory of relativity in a footnote. And that came from the cousin of Nikola Tesla. And so we can only wonder whether it was because of her knowing from him the importance of the idea, and that idea which Swamiji had given to Nikola Tesla. But for the rest of his life, Nikola Tesla talked about prana and akasha. He used those terms, always used the terms prana and akasha, which he learned from Swamiji. And so Swamiji wrote in this letter, which I mentioned, to Tesla in 1895, is there or can we conceive of a sphere behind the visible sphere of matter, of electricity? And we don't know if Tesla ever answered that particular query or how he answered, because we have many of Swamiji's letters, including his letters to Tesla, but we don't have, Swamiji didn't keep letters. And so what Tesla wrote back or didn't write back, we don't know, because Swamiji was always traveling. He couldn't keep track of all of the correspondence that came to him. So it was in his mind and not in his pockets. So, but that is a seed idea that Swamiji was asking, is there a sphere of electricity? That was Swamiji's idea of is there a sphere of lightning, which is being spoken of here? The ancients, they didn't have the term electricity. We didn't have the term electricity until relatively modern times. It was known just as lightning to the ancients, that which was electricity. And so is there a sphere of electricity? Tesla seems to have discovered that there was, because again, he claimed, and he did an experiment, but he died before he could teach others how to do it and to prove his idea. He claimed that he had discovered this, the ability to tap electricity from the ambient atmosphere itself, and to transmit electricity, great concentrated electrical energy over long distances, that he did in Colorado, claimed to have done. But again, he died before all of these things could be scientifically proven and replicated and so forth. And by that time, he had become aware of the fact that people were always ready to either steal or to crush his ideas. And so he was secretive about these ideas by that time. So anyway, departing by that path of the gods, of fire, light, daytime, bright fortnight, 6 months of the northern solstice, and then to the year, etc., to the, to the year, from the year to the sun, from the sun to the moon, from the moon to lightning. That's the full path that one goes on the path, the northern path, the path of the gods. And you know from the Mahabharata that this was an ancient idea which was very strong in Vedic culture. It was present in the Vedas, spoken about in the Upanishads as a truth. And in the Mahabharata, Bhishma. What did Bhishma do? When Bhishma was wounded in battle, he lay on his bed of arrows and waited until the winter solstice, when the sun would start moving on his northward path, because he had been mortally wounded during the southern path of the sun, that is, through the dark 6 months, where the sun is getting lower and lower in the horizon. So he waited until after December 21st, I think it is, with the northern, or 22nd, whichever, the northern path of the sun, and then he passed away consciously as a yogi. So now, does that mean that everyone should die only between December 21st and June 20th or 21st, whatever the actual dates are? No, it doesn't mean that. That was symbolic. But as often happens with symbolism, it's sometimes taken literally, or else it's shown literally in order to impress the mind. And so Bhishma waited until the northern path began again before he died, so that he could follow the Devayana, the divine path of no return. So no, it doesn't mean that if we die during the southern path of the sun that we're not going to attain to that. We're automatically going to go by the path of return. No, the idea is that these are inner paths of consciousness that we go to, and that these northern 6 months, the day, the flame, the light, the lightning, the bright fortnight of the moon, all of these are symbolic of states, and we don't know what they mean now. But it's interesting that all over the world, there was this ancient conception. It was in the Americas. Recent research, and this is scientific research, not quackery or imagination of some psychic somewhere, but research has shown that civilization in the Americas goes back tens of thousands of years. And that the ancient peoples in the Amazon basin, which had a very ancient civilization. People in the Mississippi Valley, in Alabama, there are evidences of these things in North Carolina, and many parts of the Southeast, and all through the Mississippi Valley, up into Ohio. There was a civilization which believed the same belief that the ancient Egyptians had. That when one died, one went to the belt of Orion, the constellation of Orion. There's the belt of 3 stars of Orion. That there was a door leading into the path of the Milky Way, and one followed the path of the Milky Way to the next world. And there were these stages, not the same stages mentioned here, but it was this idea of a cosmic path that had to do with the planetary realities. And so all over the world there seems to have been, because there are other evidences in other places also, there was this idea of a symbolic universe which involved cosmic and celestial realities, and a path that one went to after death, and then one had a choice of paths, the upper path and the lower path. Now here, the path which he mentions next, which we'll come to now, is lower, not in the lower sense of going down into hell. No, that they don't even deal with. They speak of 2 higher paths, one which is higher and one which is a little higher than where we are now. And so let me come to the next path, and then we'll discuss a little bit more the 2 together. Verse 25 says, Dhumo ratris tatha Krishna shanmasa dakshinayanam tatra chandramasam jyotir yogi prapya nivartate. So departing by that path, this is the path of the ancestors, Pitriyana, the path of the ancestors. One is the Devayana, going by the path of the gods, that is to a higher world. Pitriyana, the land of the world of the ancestors, that was associated with Chandraloka, and Suryaloka was associated with the Devayana. Those who have had some sort of a very virtuous life, then they go by the Devayana, go to a higher world, live with the gods, the lower gods, the Vedic gods, etc., who later became the lower gods. And there one leads a long life of refined enjoyment. And those who are normally good people, oh, my neighbor, they're good, nice people, they never hurt anybody, they're sweet, they're good family people and all of that, they go by the Pitriyana, this southern path, and they go to the Chandraloka, and there they live for a long time in the context of, as I often say, it's a long-term family reunion. where you go and you see your relatives and your friends, and especially your relatives that you've been separated from by death. And there you live for a long time. So these are the two paths. So here, departing by that path of the Pitris, of the forefathers, one goes by smoke. Now, the previous one was go by fire, but now it's by smoke. And then from fire, one goes to day, but here one goes from smoke to night. And there one went from day to the bright fortnight of the moon, Shukla Paksha. But here one goes from smoke to night to the dark fortnight of the moon. And then the 6 months of the southern path of the sun, that is when the sun is declining, going further and further south, meaning there's less and less daylight in the northern hemisphere. And then reaching lunar light, the yogi returns. So reaching Chandra Loka, one returns to this world. So these are the two paths. And so neither one is bad in a sense of punishment. No, they didn't deal with the path to punishment. Yes, there was a belief that if a person is really bad, then they go to, instead of this world, they dream a world of hellish punishment, and then after some time, they're reborn here. But the Vedas dealt with these two paths because those were the only two paths that you wanted to follow. If you were moderately good, you went to Pitriyana, the southern path, and if you were very good, very virtuous or spiritual, you went by the Devayana. And some of those who go by the Devayana, those who have had some spiritual awakening, then they go all the way up to Brahma Loka, the highest heavenly world. There they remain in a deeply spiritual state, a state of deep meditation, blissful state, and at the end of the cycle of Brahma, they attain to illumination, full illumination. So even there, they live in an illuminated state, but still with their personal identity, a very refined personal identity, not an egotistical sense that I am Swami Atmarupananda and everybody better respect me, and if I say something, I want people to follow it, and I get angry if people don't do this and don't do that. No, not that type of egotistical identity, but a highly refined sense of an illuminated personhood, but still not merged into Brahman, still a sense of individuality, a highly refined sense of individuality, like the individual soul meditating on the cosmic soul and remaining in that blissful state. And so, as I've said on other occasions, that Brahma Loka is the spiritual heaven that the mystics of all religions want to go to if they have not attained to the highest Jivan Mukti in this life. If we haven't attained to Jivan Mukti, then at least let us go to Brahma Loka, and there we will live in a state of illumination. Live in, for a devotee of Ramakrishna Loka, we will see it as Ramakrishna. For a devotee of Ramakrishna, we'll see it as Ramakrishna Loka. A devotee of Krishna sees it as Vaikuntha. The devotee of Shiva sees it as Kailasa. The Buddhist sees it as the Western paradise, etc. A highly spiritual heaven, not a heaven of family reunion, not a heaven of enjoyment, but a highly spiritual heaven. So these are the two paths. And so you see the contrast between the two in the symbolism. One is all a path of light, from light to greater light. And this a path of smokiness, darkness, the dark fortnight of the moon. And again, that's not darkness in the sense of punishment darkness. No, it's not entering into a dark, miserable state. It's just that compared to the other state, to the other path, it's a path of where you don't have clear perception. And the Devayana is a path of luminosity, a bright path. And this is an ordinary path where you go. So verse 26, we just have 5 minutes left, but let me finish these 3 verses quickly so that in next class I can, in the review, if there's anything needed, I can go over them a little more, but so that we have a sense of completion with tonight's class. So 26 says, Shukla Krishne gati hyete jagata shashvate mate ekaya yatyana vrittim anyaya vartate punaha. So these two well-known courses, Shukla Krishne Gati Hyete, Ete Shukla Krishne Gati, these two paths of light and and darkness, which are white and black, Shashvate Mate, are considered eternal. By the one, Ekaya Yati Anavrittim. By one attains to non-return, and by the other, one comes back here again, Punaha. So by one, someone goes to the state of non-return, one returns again by the other. So here it's significant in the translation, according to Madhusudana's commentary. He says, by the one, someone goes to the state of non-return. Because most who go by the Devayana, they have to return also. Most who go by Devayana have to return. They go and spend a long time, and then they have to come back to the karma bhumi, here to this world, to be reborn and to finish out their karma. Only those who have had a spiritual awakening, a significant spiritual awakening, go by that path all the way to Brahma Loka. And even among them, some return, as has already been said by Krishna and the commentators earlier. They return. But a few who have had spiritual awakening, but not full awakening, then they go to Brahma Loka and never return from there. They remain there in a state of illumination and attain to full enlightenment from that state. You may think that, I don't want to go to some place like that. I'd rather come back here to this world, which is so fun, and see my friends and see the people I love and all of that. No, you won't want to, because you'll see that this was just a shadow. This was just a shadow. It's like saying that, I was living in some miserable place, but I got used to it, and I was so used to it that I started liking it. But then I got to a chance to move to Hawaii, to a beachfront home where everything was beautiful, and all year long the weather was fine, and I had all the food I could eat. Now you think, no, I want to go back to that old hovel I lived in this miserable place that was dirty and dank and so forth. No, you wouldn't want to. So here it's much more like that. If you read the accounts of people who have had near-death experiences, and I've known people, and whether you know it or not, all of you here have known people who have had near-death experiences, because they're not that uncommon. And I've known people who have told me about their near-death experiences. And those near-death experiences which have been clinically reported and studied, people say that when they left the body and then they found themselves going back into the body, they said, no, I don't want to go back to that. No, please don't, I don't want to go back to that. But then they found themselves being pulled back into the body. One man, a devotee, an American devotee, told me that when he experienced clinical death, his wife was, let me not get ahead of myself. He experienced clinical death in the hospital. And so his wife was present. He had been taken to the hospital for something, and then suddenly he experienced the death. He was clinically declared dead. His wife started chanting Hari Om Ramakrishna. He had already left the body, and he heard her chanting Hari Om Ramakrishna, and he said, why is she chanting that? Let me go, let me go, let me go. And then he felt himself being pulled back into the body, and then there he was, lying on the operating table, once again conscious. But he felt bad that he was irritated at hearing Hari Om Ramakrishna, because he felt it was pulling him back into the body. They didn't want to come back. So if we go to Brahma Loka, it's not that, I'm going to feel so bad leaving everything behind. No, that is so superior to things here. And from that standpoint, you see, this was all just a shadow. All of this was a shadow. The things we hold on to, cling to so tightly, it's just a shadow. Like you see sometimes now digitally in special effects. I see it sometimes on something on YouTube where they have a special digital effects where there's a figure of a filmed person, an actual person, and then suddenly the person turns to ash and just blows away. So it's like that. These things we see. Oh my God! It was just a phantasm. It was just some sort of strange veil over my mind. So nothing in you would want to come back to that. So these two well-known courses of the world, which are white and black, are considered eternal. By the one, someone goes to the state of non-return, that is, those who have attained a high enough state, and one returns again by the other necessarily. And so the next verse, Naite sriti partha janan yogi muhyati kaschana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhavarjuna. O son of Pritha, no yogi whosoever has known these two courses becomes deluded. If you know these two courses, there's no more delusion. Therefore, O Arjuna, be you steadfast in yoga at all times. So be steadfast in yoga, because then you will understand these paths and you will know how to traverse them. And the last verse, Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva daneshu tat punya phalam pradishtam atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. So whatever result of righteousness has been declared with regard to the study of Vedas, sacrifices, austerities, and also charities, all that the yogi transcends by having known this, and he reaches the primordial supreme state. Yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. The yogi attains to that supreme state, primordial state, before all of this came into being. And so whatever result, the punya phala, the virtuous fruit that you get from study of the Vedas, from yajneshu, from performing yajnas, from tapassu, that is found in the performance of tapasya, and daneshu, in the performance of charity, giving gifts. All of the merit that you get from all of those, the yogi transcends all of that. So all of that, you go beyond. Then you see that where the yogi goes by knowing this truth and how to follow the path to non-return, that nothing compares to that. The study of the Vedas falls aside. The performance of sacrifices, charity, tapasya, all of that falls far behind. So with that, we'll stop here. And next class, before beginning chapter 9, I'll just give a brief summary of chapter 8. And then we'll move on to chapter 9. So now it's already past time, so I'll give a closing chant rather than asking for questions. And if anyone has questions, they can ask me afterwards outside. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. That infinite reality is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come, and yet that being remains ever the same. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So briefly turn that off. For announcements, briefly,